Here's what is actually happening, and I want to say this as plainly as I can. This is not just a Minnesota story. This is an American taxpayer story.
You ought to have voter ID. You ought to insist on it. California is more corrupt than Minnesota.
Because once a system learns how to get fooled in one state, this doesn't stay local anymore. It spreads. And now you're seeing California mentioned in the same breath. Investigations, funding freezes, and the same excuses you've heard before. In a second, I'm going to show you the 3-step pipeline that makes this kind of fraud repeatable anywhere.
The governor of California says, bring it on.
Oh, we'll be there. We think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. So Minnesota is unbelievable what we've seen, but it is leading us to networks all over the country and overseas, and we're going to follow every single one of them. Homeland Security Investigations is an incredible team of individuals who go after human traffickers, sex traffickers, but the fraud that we have in our public programs that are tied to California, absolutely. We're going to come to you, Governor Newsom, and we're going to arrest every single individual that has ties to this kind of stealing of taxpayer dollars, and we will hold them accountable.
All right, welcome back. Grab your coffee, because today we're not doing rage bait. We're doing accountability. And here's the big picture. Minnesota gets exposed. People start asking questions. And then the spotlight starts moving, because once the feds and Congress smell waste, fraud, and abuse, they don't stop at the state line. That's part of Congress, not all of it. I'm not defending those clowns.
And so what's the need, for example, for 1,200 transportation companies inside of Minnesota? What's the need for that many transportation?
Well, there isn't. And so to have that many non-emergency medical transportation companies, it's not possible that they can transport that many people. I have been to many of these transportation companies, and I've been time-stamping my photographs for a whole year at one facility in Minneapolis, and those vans in that parking lot had not moved 1 inch in an entire year. They're all still sitting there.
Okay, let's clarify what we know and what people assume. Minnesota has had major fraud cases tied to public programs. One of the biggest examples people keep pointing to is this Feeding Our Future and the child nutrition money. A lot of money that moved fast. A lot of oversight failed. And when money comes fast, criminals move faster. Now, here's what I want you to notice. This isn't one bad guy. This is a system problem, and that matters. Because if it's a system problem, it can happen anywhere.
Look back that all the leading figures of the 2024 presidential election are pretty much disgraced. Biden because of his age, Harris, we'll see what she does in the future, but I don't think she's a national figure anymore. And Tim Walz now can't even run for re-election in Minnesota. I mean, this guy was on the national fast track and he crashed and burned faster than most political figures I've covered, and the incompetence and just the lack of attention to a major welfare fraud scandal in his state just really raises questions about how he was named to the national ticket in the first place. This stuff was going on during that vetting process.
Now, here's the part most people miss. This isn't random. It's a repeatable pipeline, and it usually looks like this. Step 1, money gets released fast. Remember all the COVID money and all that kind of stuff? Emergency rules, rushed approvals. You think back to what happened in Hawaii, think back to what happened in California a year ago with all the fires. These are rushed approvals, overwhelmed offices. They are receiving so many requests for help that they just start signing checks. Speed becomes the priority, not accuracy, not accountability. Step 2, the verification process becomes optional, right? We've got to think of the children. Let's just get it out there.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
It becomes optional, not on paper. On paper, there are rules, but in real life, the checks get watered down. Step 3, fraud hides behind chaos and politics. We're seeing it. We've seen it. We know what's happening. Think of Ukraine with all the chaos. They put all of this suffering on camera. It plucks on the heartstrings, because when someone raises their hand and says, hey, this doesn't look right, the system freezes. Nobody wants the headline. Nobody wants the accusation. So everyone argues and the money walks out the door while you're distracted. That is the pipeline. And once criminals learn that pipeline works, they copy and paste it. They repeat it everywhere.
Whistleblowers tell GOP candidates that California could be losing $250 billion in the state's education system, including reports of fake community college applications, scamming student aid funds. Which brings us to a different kind of fraud: ghost daycares.
So now let's talk about the California angle, because this is where people get sloppy. Here's the responsible way that we're going to frame it. Minnesota got exposed. That triggers scrutiny. Scrutiny spreads. And now you're seeing California brought into the conversation through reports of investigations and funding that are being reviewed or paused or frozen due to fraud concerns brought up by, guess for it, wait for it, whistleblowers. Whether you love or hate that politically, the point is simple. When fraud gets proven in one place, the government starts looking for the same pattern elsewhere.
I think the next Democratic president has to be ruthless. Not just president, next presidential candidate. The 2028 Democratic primaries have to showcase a group of politicians who are running for office to not just fix things, which is the next Democratic president should run on a plan to prosecute Elon Musk. That would, they would easily go to the top of the pack. They would immediately go to the top of the polls in the Democratic race. So the first Democrat who comes out and says, my first act as president is to prosecute Elon Musk.
Let me do what the internet refuses to do. Two things can be true. First, if the government is writing checks without verifying reality, that is a problem. Taxpayers have every right to demand answers. Second, screaming mass arrests tomorrow is not how real investigations work. If you want convictions that stick, you need evidence, paper trails, audits, warrants, cooperation, all that boring stuff. And here's the life raft principle. Help real families, but verify the system. That's not partisan. That's grown up.
Across party lines, everybody in our government said this man was a narco-terrorist and we want to get him. What's the problem? You got him. Why are we complaining? People in Venezuela ain't complaining. Venezuelans throughout this nation ain't complaining. A lot of people in Latin America ain't complaining about the fact that you got him. You got people, I know somebody from Venezuela, and now they fantasizing about going back because he's finally been captured. And we complaining. Are we complaining because it's legit, or are we complaining because it was Trump? And this is something that could be perceived as beneficial to him and the GOP for the midterm, and ultimately whoever's running in 2028 that wants to mirror the policies that he's implemented. Come on now. We got to be smarter than that, better than that as a nation. We could complain about a lot of things. We should not be complaining about the fact that Nicolas Maduro is captured. We should not be complaining about that. Not if we care about people instead of politics.
Now let's talk fixes. If we're serious, here are reforms that crush fraud without punishing honest families. 1, verification that's automatic before money goes out. 2, cross-agency data matching so the same entity can't double dip and you don't get people like Michael Byrd running a $190 million daycare center out of his house. 3, clawbacks and real penalties for intentional fraud. 4, whistleblower protection for workers who flag problems early. And 5, shorter funding burst with required audits between payments. You do those 5 and the pipeline collapses.
Well, also it's Trump. I mean, 42% of the American people would oppose it if he cured cancer personally in the Oval Office tonight. I mean, there is a reflexive opposition to Trump. It is the entire platform of the Democratic Party, and to the extent that that's how their leadership tells them to act, that's how the Democratic grassroots are going to see it. You see Democrats today who long came on this network and others and called for Maduro's ouster, demanded it, now saying they oppose the fact that Donald Trump just arrested Maduro. This reflexive opposition to everything Trump does is corrosive of the Democratic Party, and you shouldn't look at these things through that lens. You should look at it and say, highly competent military and law enforcement operation, we got rid of a bad guy, there's a better future for Venezuela, and it's going to inure to the United States' benefit. But, you know, it's Trump, so everything must be opposed.
Now, this is where I want to hit the point hard, because if your state is next, you won't get a warning. You'll find out after the money is gone, after the program is discredited, after honest people get punished, because criminals game the system.
But Jimmy, I don't think I looked at a lot of people didn't seem to know the words there.
Yeah,
but I think it was Gregory Meeks. He was shaking his cane to the music, to the beat. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, that's an issue.
You see that on the left.
Well, they couldn't do the national anthem because half of the Democrats would have knelt. You know, they would have went back to the old school. I love that they're.
I don't know.
I know. I love that they're pretending to like America and they're trying to play up January 6th. I'm like, you've been promising to arrest ICE agents for the past year. Like, you're promising to like dox them and throw them in jail. You're not like a friend of America or the people putting on the uniform to protect it. Every time you watch the Democrats, you feel like it's the audition round for a reality show called America's Got Issues. That's all this is.
Here's my warning to every politician, left or right. If you let fraud rot inside of public programs, you don't lose money, you lose trust. And when working people believe the system is a slot machine for insiders, that's when the country starts to fracture. This should be the easiest sentence in America. Taxpayer money should go to real people for real services. I want to hear every member of Congress say that. And if California and other states are now getting pulled into this, good. Not because we want a political win, but because we want the pipeline shut down everywhere.
You ought to have voter ID. You ought to insist on it. You ought to insist on it. Can you imagine? In California, they not only don't have voter ID, but if an official at the voting booths, which they don't have, by the way, because it's all mail, if an official, a voting official, even asks somebody for voter ID, sir, would like to see your identification. Do you come from our country? They put him in jail for tampering with the election. Okay? We got to straighten this out before it gets too crazy. California is more corrupt than any place. California is more corrupt than Minnesota. And I won Minnesota. Well, Tom's going, I think so. Well, it's close. It can't be proportionately, probably nothing's more corrupt, right?
Now, I want one thing from you in the comments. What is the one verification rule you'd require before any state gets federal money? Attendance checks, audits, site visits, ID verification, voter ID, pick one. Also, if you want accountability without the circus, hit subscribe and share this with one friend who still thinks this is just a Minnesota thing. It's not just Minnesota. This is everywhere. The amount of people that are defending actual fraud right now in the United States just because the president is a Republican is insane. They care more about their hatred for him than they do the love of America or for the love of their fellow neighbor that's getting ripped off. I'll see you in the next one.